Welcome back to another podcast here at ACC. Today I'm being joined by my old friend Zackery McKinney. I met him, several years ago working camps, and guy's a musical talent that I'll never be. Comes from a musical family, and so here's the deal. We've been trying to do something where we kind of get somebody who knows something in an area, kind of an expert in the field. Sometimes it's just me and the family, but we've been trying to get an expert and then have them talk about their area of expertise. Well, what Zach did, he asked if he could share some of his testimony and some of his music. And man, I don't know anybody who'd be any more of an expert about any subject than themselves. So I'm gonna hand it over to you and share with us, man. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, man. It all started April 25th, 1997. That's really where, of course, birth is where my testimony starts. Number one, a few things about myself. I'm 23 years old, about to be 23 years old, April 25th, and I will be in ministry. Oh goodness, I've probably been in ministry at least 15, 16 years off and on. Mm-hmm. I come from a very musical background as far as family goes, as he said. My dad was a part of the Church of God organization and preached and pastored and evangelized. He's still evangelizing today. My dad's been preaching since he was 16, and not to give his age, but he's been preaching a long, long time now, and it's been close to 30 some odd years in the ministry now. And God's just been blessing him. He's got a church here in Longview, Texas, called All Tribes Worship Center. I'm actually visiting them. I should be, doing what everybody else is regulated to do. I had to come see some family though. But yeah, my dad is been a minister, and my mom, she lives in Baker. My dad is Wade McKinney, and I'll get into more of that story later on. But they're two of the best people I know. Excellent musicians, excellent singers, excellent songwriters, and come from a long list of Southern gospel background. But I also have a little bit of country background in me too on my dad's side. I'm kin to George Jones on my daddy's side of the family.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, kin to George Jones. Long down the line, but my dad's family opened up for him at Jones Country and Tyler and stuff like that for the gospel side of things. So, but yeah, man, my story really begins April 25th of 97. I was born in Houston, Texas, St. Joseph's Hospital, and born 10:35 a.m. and I was 2 weeks premature. Thus the big head. That's all I really know how to say it. But man, God's been on my side since the very beginning, even though that I haven't always been on His side. I'll say it like gospel music artist Russ Taff said, "I'm only here because of Jesus. I'm only here because of Him." Man, when it started out, I was born not breathing. The enemy tried to take me out at a very early age. Just right when I was born, the life was leaving out of my mother. Life was leaving me. I was born not breathing, and you can't help but get emotional over that because of God's miracle working power that was shown that day. Because Dad had a vision from the Lord 2 weeks before I was even born, and the Lord told him, "This is what you say. This is what you will do," telling him not to panic pretty much. I'm in this wholeheartedly. The enemy's going to try and take him out. And so Dad just pushed the nurses aside and he said, "I have to speak life over my promise." And he said, you will live and you will not die, and you will declare the works of the Lord. And so that's where everything started. Fast forward 2 years. 2 years later, my dad was pastoring a church in Trinity, Texas, Trinity Church of God to be exact. And my dad was pastoring down there, and I was out playing in the yard. I was 2 years old, and just a couple of weeks after turning 2 years old, and I was out in the yard, and 3 ants bit me right on the arm. And little did I know, and little did my parents know, I was allergic, and went into anaphylactic shock, and actually ended up having to be put into an ambulance. And in the ambulance, the enemy tried to take me out there. I actually flatlined and died. But God, man. And so along through life, man, as I said, musical family. We started playing in churches, playing music. I started playing guitar probably at the age of 6. Started playing drums at the age of 4. Got my first harmonica when I was 3. I don't have my harps with me right now. Otherwise, I would do something with it. But harmonica, and I play a little bit of banjo, a little bit of stuff like that, and bass guitar. But grew up going from church to church, man. Really ministering the gospel. God would send us to places and seasons of our lives, and there were some that were very dry seasons. There were some that were very prosperous seasons. We moved to Weatherford, Texas, probably when I was at the age of about 14. And before that, my dad pastored a church for 10 years, non-denominational. He was before he got back into the Church of God again, long term of events. And we ended up adopting my little brother. He is 15 now, but was 18 months old. Ended up adopting him, and then fast forward to I was 14, and we were blessed to adopt another little girl, and her name was Aaliyah. And you've met Aaliyah. You know how crazy and wild and rambunctious she was at that age. She's about to be, oh goodness, she's about to be 9 years old. So I'm feeling the age, man. I really am. But she's growing up to be a very smart young lady, and Caleb's growing up to be a very smart young man. And so we moved to Weatherford, Texas, and we started working youth camps. That's actually where I met you guys. Mm-hmm. Started getting opportunity after opportunity with my family being in the Southern Gospel field of music. And if you don't know what Southern Gospel is, put a little bit of Jesus lyrics to it and add a country rhythm track, and there you go. You got yourself some Southern Gospel. But we grew up singing the redback hymns of the church and stuff like that. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. All that type of stuff. We grew up singing all of that. And excuse me, but I have ADD, so I will probably jump from talking back to the guitar and then back to talking again.
Hey, it's your story, man.
So we stayed so busy. And when I was 13 years old, before we moved to Weatherford, my grandmother, she had passed away due to cancer, breast cancer. I say she won the fight. Praise the Lord. I know where she's at. Mm-hmm. But she was very close to me during the 10 years of pastoring down in Southeast Texas. We lived next door to her, so she was the one that got me really introduced to the Southern Gospel way of music. She would turn on a Gaither homecoming video, if you know what those are. Turn on a Gaither homecoming video and say, "Baby, one day you'll be amongst those people singing with those people," and just spoke life into my existence of what I was going to do and what I was going to proclaim. And when she passed away, October will actually be 10 years that she's been gone. And I started with, I didn't know that I was dealing with it at the time frame, but I can trace it back to then where really the depression started for me. I started internalizing my own feelings, started bottling it all up inside of me. And, you know, on this journey, I knew of who Jesus was. I just didn't, I didn't know the real Jesus. I didn't know the one that says, here, I can take away that depression. I can take away that pain. And I didn't know him as a personal friend at that point in time. And going along through life, there were different situations. Now, you've seen youth camp services, man, where the power of God would just fall, and it would fall like rain, man. And God would start moving. I would feel God in those moments. But when I was done performing in front of people, when I was done leading worship, when I was done playing an instrument, I would go off the stage, and back down again I'd go. I'd put on a very good face, and I would always be laughing, cutting up. Man, I used to love youth camps because I could forget about everything that was going on, and I could focus on the one who created me. I could focus on him. Now, granted, we were all running around and acting like a bunch of wild hooligans, but hey, I mean, you know, you were actually one of my camp counselors actually at one point in time. So that was a long time ago, but you know, that was where you kind of got a piece of safety, and the only safety that I had was in church or on a guitar, or some other instrument. And so we traveled everywhere, and with those instances of being involved in Southern gospel music, we became really close friends with a guy named Adam Crabb, and of the Crabb family. If you know anything about the Crabb family, they are Southern gospel music's premier family. They have been around for a long time, and we got to know them personally through those years at National Quartet Convention in Louisville, Kentucky, and Adam coming down. And I remember several youth camps that Adam would come down and work and would sing for us. And one time it was at youth camp, and it was just one of those deals that God opens up the door. And he called me and he said, hey, he said, man, you know our music a lot better than most people. He said, my drummer just came down with food poisoning. Can you play? And I said, sure, man, I would be honored. And of course, I'm like a little school kid. I'm about to, jump out of my seams. I'm so excited, and got to play for him then. And, it was just different things that happened through the years. And through the time of being with the Church of God organization, I played harmonica. The Lord has blessed me to be able to win the Woodwind Division International Harmonica. I won with a harmonica with International Woodwind Division in Teen Talent, which is a huge deal up there in Cleveland, Tennessee. You know as well as I do. Many trips have been made with youth groups to go up there to nationals.
I've only been blessed to go once when we went for MIP, but man, it is gorgeous up there.
Yeah, it is wonderful.
Absolutely. It is. And for anybody going to Cleveland, go check out, what is it called? It's like City Diner or something like that.
Yes, City Diner. Yeah.
Good Lord, you will never get as much bang for your buck as you get in that place.
So good, man.
That's just free advertisement right there. Sorry.
Almost plug, but hey, it works. But man, we started traveling some more. We moved to Weatherford, Texas, and then we moved again. We had pastored in Edgewood, Texas. We've pastored in Trinity, and we've pastored in Southeast Texas around the Beaumont area. And we started evangelizing more and more. And so it broadened our horizon. And my family, we had a group, Heritage Crossing, and we started traveling with that group. And Dad would preach the revivals, and we would sing before he would preach. And God would show up tremendously. And we learned through all of that, just God's favor, God's light was shining down on us. And, you feel like when you're reaching the peaks of the mountains, you feel like that you're climbing upward so much, and you feel like you're on top of the world, and then it can be knocked down from under you within an instant due to natural causes, due to family issues, or whatever the case may be. And me and my sister, I haven't mentioned her, my older sister, Marissa Thompson. She is her and her husband have got a beautiful baby girl that I am privileged to call my niece. Love her to death. And my sister was on the road with us at the time frame. And she did the drama ministry. She did praise dances and stuff like that. And so when we started doing more and more concert events, we got invited from a friend of ours, said, hey, go up to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and go up there around the Smoky Mountain area, and Dollywood is doing a audition for their Southern Gospel Harvest celebration. And so me and my family loaded up. I don't remember what age I was at this time frame. I really don't. But we started singing at Dollywood that year. And we sang at Dollywood probably 4 or 5 times. I still say that my home is where the heart is. So my heart is still in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I've never got. So we sang there, grew up around that area, and just loved going there for vacations. And God really blessed us. We were in the top 50 with some of our Southern Gospel songs. Just amazing, just how the favor of God showed down upon us. And then things started slowing down that I can remember. My memory's a little bit foggy with some things. I think some of that's a good thing, some of that's a bad thing, with how things happen. But during the time frame where I was 16, 17 years old, my parents weren't getting along as great as they should. And by the time that I was 19 years old, my parents rewind. I was 17 years old. I was in rebellion. I'll say that. I was hanging around people that I shouldn't have hung around like everybody else does through those normal experiences. And I started hanging around just a bunch of just people I shouldn't have. And I grew up country boy, man. I grew up with all the wild and crazy ones that would throw bonfires and all of that stuff. And so when all that took place, I then said, I don't want to do this anymore. There's got to be more to life than traveling on the road and being a musician. Now, what the enemy can do is plant those seeds inside your head to where what your calling is and what you know to be right, what you know that your internal calling is, that God has placed inside your life. He will plant those seeds of doubt, of should I really be doing this? Should I really be even involved in this? Because all it has been is it's, you feel like you're performing more than you are being anointed, if that makes sense. Because there's nights that I would get up there, and I'll be honest with you, my heart wasn't in it. My heart was not in it a lot of nights. And I would flow out of my gifting. And I mean, it's something I've never really shared with anybody. I would stand up there and I would sing those songs over and over again. But here's the thing. I knew when to raise my hand. I knew when to shout amen in the middle of my dad's message. I knew when to do all of that. Not that he was telling me to do that, but I knew how to blend in with everybody and sing to be okay, even in the midst of my mental turmoil. So, and along with this, by the time that I was 19, due to just some circumstances, they did not see the need to be married anymore. And I, along with that, I developed more of a thing of what could I have done? What could I have done differently? You didn't want to see it happen. You didn't want to see it happen, but you blamed yourself for those things. You blamed yourself internally. Well, this is your fault. This is happening because of you. And, my sister had come off the road. I had come off the road. And I said, I don't want to ever go back into ministry again. I'll never forget those words. And around about the age of 18, I got my first job, really, because we weren't ever home. And started working at a guitar store, and was still going to church. I hadn't gone completely crazy. I was doing fine. And then 19 rolled around, and I had my first first round. I'll say first round because it gets a little bit more in depth a little bit later on down the road. But I had my first rounds with alcohol. And when I was 19 years old, I'd hit it and did it on back roads and everywhere else that I could to get away. And you find out that through the alcohol, what you think is going on is that it blocks those painful memories of whatever may have happened, or it blocks the depression, the voices inside your head that tell you that you ain't good enough, that you aren't, you ain't the best looking, that's why you're single, or whatever the case may be, and you think that the alcohol can suffice those feelings. And it worked for a little while, and then it would wear off. And I started experimenting with alcohol a little more during that time frame. And then to fast forward a little bit, Reader's Digest version today, just a little bit of I've gone through a lot, but man, I got the opportunity. I'd gotten cleaned up and gotten, my mind right somewhat. And at this point in time in my life, I was like, you know what, I'm a musician, and I'm going to look for those, whether it be in a Christian arena or whether it be in a country arena, I'm going to find success. That's what I'm going to do. And I knew that in those instances that I would, if I cleaned up my act, I could look presentable and look like everybody else. So in a sense, I'm still playing church. I still don't know the same Jesus yet. I still don't understand who he is. And I got a call, long turn of events happened. I got a call from a guy named Eddie James. A lot of your viewers and yourself, Eddie came to a lot of Winterfest concerts and a lot of youth camps for us. And Eddie's premier gospel artist. He did. He wrote the song, I believe he wrote the song. I am the Lord, I'm the Almighty God. I am the one for whom nothing is too hard. Wrote all that. Wrote countless songs. Lord, make me a house of prayer. Stuff like that. Just very deep worship songs. And I packed up at the age, of about probably 20 years old, and decided to hop on the road and go travel. And I will say this, man, I do not regret going on those trips. I do not, because it showed me the world. It showed me the states. That, man, I counted it up at that point in time with traveling with my family and then traveling with Eddie. The Lord has blessed me to be in probably 30, maybe even more states out of the 50, 30 or more. And sorry, the truck went by and it was a little bit loud, but
all right.
And so I traveled with Eddie for about 4.5 months, and I played acoustic guitar for him. Played a little bit of harmonica here or there, but I played mainly acoustic. Got this beautiful guitar when I was traveling on the road with him, or before I went on the road with him. It was given to me. It was a blessing, and I'm forever grateful for this. And if they're watching, Kim and Clay Dyer are the reason why I still have this guitar. They are sweet people, and I thank them for that. But, man, it was a turn of events where I started traveling and seeing everything, and life was going so fast. We had gained so much, and he was already popular. Eddie was very popular. I mean, I went from playing in front of 300 to 400 people with my family or more, in Southern gospel arenas, to performing in front of thousands. And I'll never forget, he told me, he said, man, would you like to go to Israel with us? And I was like, absolutely. Yeah, I would kill to go to Israel, man.
Yeah,
That'd
of
be awesome.
course.
And during the time frame, you know, my heart still wasn't in it. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know. But I thought that the answer, and I knew it was God. I knew it was God because my answer was waiting there. Because even though that you've been taught and you've said the sinner's prayer, you will still have doubts if you've been in it long enough of, is this Jesus that I'm singing about, did he really rise from the dead? Did he really? It's more of a epic adventure of self-discovery and of who God is for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. Whoever said that Christianity is easy, they obviously are not walking with the same Jesus that I am. It makes life a little bit easier for you, and it does things. He will put you in places that you never dreamed of even being. Hence, Israel. And we're playing at the Pius Arena one night, which the Pius Arena, if you don't understand what that is, it's like American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. Huge basketball arena.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on God TV. We were on God TV. And we went, and it was 15 to 20,000 people were there that night. Scared me to death.
I can't imagine it.
Scared me to death, man. I had played in front of, countless Southern Gospel people. I've played in front of countless events for the Church of God organization, camp meetings, everything. That didn't scare me, but this did. It was something, and it was like the eyes were all on you. The eyes were all on you, and here's the thing about the mental games that go on is that when you mess up a chord, something like that, you hear it. When you're a musician, you hear what you mess up on, and you begin to beat yourself up about it. Well, if it's okay to say it, this sounds like crap. This sounds, horrible. You sounded horrible out there tonight, and you begin to internalize things. Well, that night I was so scared I could hardly play. I could hardly play a note. And Eddie told me something that night that I'll never forget. I'll never forget it. And he looked at me and he said, son, he said, when you're walking with Christ and you give him your all, when you finally give him your all, because he knew. Yeah, I mean, evidently God was just speaking into him, and he said, when you give God your all, he will put you in places that you never thought that you'd be in. And he said, if you walk with him, he says that he'll give you the desires of your heart. Now, we both know that scripture can internalized, twisted, bent, bruised.
Yeah.
But what its meaning is when you seek ye first the kingdom of God, all of these things will be added unto you. All of these things. And so I'd come off the road with Eddie. With him, I toured for about 4.5 months, and we went to 85 churches. 85 churches in 4.5 months. A lot of traveling. I said, oh, I do not want to do that again. It was so crazy, at the time frame. And so, to fast forward a little bit, I had worked in some churches. I worked as a youth pastor at one. And due to some growing up that I had never done, because my whole MO was to walk out when things got tough. My whole thing was to keep there from being any more mental battle with myself. I'm going to have to leave, because as you and I know, we both have tempers, man. We're human. And so when things get rough, it's either you lose your sanctification with the individual or you walk out. And so, and I'm not saying that, quitting's always the best option, because there's a lot of things that I should have stuck out. And there's a lot of things that I should have just kept with, but I didn't. But I I remember one of the last words that the pastor had told me before I left. He said, Zach, he said, I'll tell you something. And if he's watching this, Art Musgrove, I love you so much, and you are still a hero of mine, and I love you so much, man. You helped make me the man that I am today, and I appreciate it so much. And it was by these words. He said, you got a lot of growing up to do, kid. He said, you have my blessing to go. But he said, just know this, that when things start getting rough in life, sometimes you have to ride it out. You have to ride it out like a wild bull at a rodeo. You have to ride it out. So I took that and left there. I moved up with my dad. And this is where things start to take a major, major, major turn for me. As I said, I went to Israel. There's a lot of things that happened there that I won't get into. But I'd seen a lot of things that let me know that Jesus was real. But there was still the internal battle of fully trusting him, because I had severe trust issues. I had severe, it's crazy to even think that you would have problems trusting Jesus, but when you have trust issues and walls that you build up, you don't want to let anybody in. And I've been there so many times. Not saying that my guard is completely down. It's completely down right now, because this is just, when you called me to do this, I knew that this is what I had to do. I knew that this is what I had to do today. Moving on forward, this is where things really took a change in my life for the worst. I had lied to myself, told myself, you're not depressed, you just got mind games, whatever the case may be. And I moved to Canton, Texas. I'm losing age gaps here of what age I was. I know that I was either 21 or a little bit over the age of 21. And so I started going to my dad's church, and then I had another call from a pastor who has been a hero of mine. He is a great man of God, and he is still one of my heroes to this day. And he's taught me so much. And his name is Lance Crump of Cross Power Church in Campbell, Texas, which was only about an hour from me. And he said, hey, man, I need a guitar player. And I was like, man, I'm not looking in being in any type of ministry. I'm really not. And he said, all I need you to do is come play guitar. That's all I need you to do. Help us out with music just a little bit. And so I started going, and I started getting a word from someone who this guy had so many accolades in the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, or PRCA, as a bareback rider in the 90s. This guy was a rodeo hero, and he was just amazing. And he taught the word for the cowboy. It wasn't a cowboy church, but he taught it from a cowboy standpoint. But it was real, and it would step on your toes, and you better be wearing steel-toe work boots when you go in there to go sit down, because he's going to stomp on them. He's going to stomp on the toes a little bit. And it's more than just, it was more along the lines of not just life application, but, the old-fashioned preaching. A lot of people don't understand it, but the get right, get left. Get right or get left types of scenarios. And I kept going to his church, and I was sitting there, and I get a call one day from a friend of mine. I had been around rodeo a little bit. I had a bunch of friends that were in rodeo, and I had a friend of mine call me, and he said, hey, man, he said, I need you to cover for me. I said, you need me to cover for you for what, man? He said, I need you to be a rodeo clown. I said, do what? He said, I need you to go be a rodeo clown. He said, I just need you to get and you're imagining how tall I am. You know how tall I am. I'm 6'7", man. That's a little crazy, And he said, just go out there, throw on some paint and be funny. That's all you got to do. And so I went out there and I started it for the right reasons. I started the rodeo industry for the right reasons. I had a year and a half to almost 2 years in the business of being a rodeo clown. And still, it was amazing because I would go out into some arenas and I would make people laugh all night long that I was there. And then when the lights went off and the clown makeup came off, I was left with me. I was left with the anxiety. I was left with the vulnerability. I was left with, I was left with every ounce of fear that you can imagine. And I had some friends of mine invite me out to a bar one night, and I went, and one thing led to another, and I got really, really, really drunk for the first time in my life. And I said, this is more than just the bouts with alcohol that I had before. This is something that the voices have stopped. I can function. That's what I thought. It's actually stopped. I'm happy. I'm a happier person. And with all of that taking place, sorry, there's a siren going by. I've got ADD. I didn't tell you, but making sure that it's out here. Okay. There we go. Everything's all good. Okay, you can edit it, right? Okay. So I leave I was talking about leaving the bar, and was so drunk, man, so drunk, and I realized I was like, man, I feel better. I feel better about myself. I feel completely fine. And then at another rodeo, I had gotten drunk again. And a buddy of mine said, hey, I know you're hurting from getting banged up a little bit. He said, here. And I had already been smoking cigarettes and stuff at the time frame. Pretty much everything that you could do to get away from the calling of God on your life, I did it. Besides, I'm thankful to God that I didn't go this far. I didn't do the cocaine. I didn't do, the meth. But I did experiment more and more with marijuana. And I experimented more with that. Some people say you can't get addicted to it, but I think they're wrong.
Yeah,
because your mind tells you need it to survive. And so I had been rodeoing and stuff like that, and here's the thing, I had become a closet alcoholic pretty much to my friends. I was still working at a church, still singing on a Sunday morning. That's some dangerous territory. Very dangerous territory. And man, I was afraid that lightning, I was raised right, man. I was afraid that lightning was going to come into the building and I was going to get struck dead. That's what I thought. And along that period of time, I had gone out to, this is not a plug, but I had gone out to Fort Worth, Texas, and I had gone to Stockyards Rodeo out there. And I left there, and they had a concert over at Billy Bob's that night. And Billy Bob's is a huge place of sin. It was a place of fun for me back then. They had good bull ridings in there. That's the only thing that they really got going for them. But I had gone in there and listened to several artists, and I'd hear, I was privileged to get to hear some of the best in country music, man. I heard people like Stoney LaRue, and heard a guy named ZZ Top, a guy with ZZ Top, Billy Gibbons. I heard him. It was just, I went there to escape. And little did I realize that over the last, the period of those few months, I had made pretty much Billy Bob's my sanctuary. And I may come out with a song later that's talking about from a bar room to a church pew, you know, of making your home, making your place. And I mean, I'd gone there so much that the security guards and the bouncers knew me. Like, it was, if I had a problem with anybody, all I did was, that's all I had to do. And because they were, you know, friends of mine at the time, and I'd gone through bouts of everything, and I was working. I'd been working at AT&T Communications, not to give a plug there. I know that we're doing a lot of plugs here, but I'd been working there in Canton, and I was still working, and had a girl come in that I thought that she was the one for me, and it all went downhill from there, to the point where I will say it like this, in a whole new light. I was blinded by seduction. Like Samson. Samson knew, just to give a biblical example, Samson knew what his calling was. He knew that his strong abilities came from the Lord above. But what did he do? He was tempted and blinded by seduction by Delilah, and he let it overtake him. I had never, throughout all that time of me acting crazy, until then, I had never slept with a woman, never, you know, I would go out on dates and stuff like that, but I'd never gone that far in my life. And my dad got remarried. My dad is remarried. She's a sweet lady, Becky McKinney, and she's a sweet lady. And when they got married, you know, I was very happy for them. You know, I sang at their wedding and stuff like that, and whatever. Well, that my girlfriend at the time, I'm not going to name any names at all, safety purposes.
Yeah. I don't remember her name, but I remember this period. You know, just following on Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you could tell that I had become involved, and I looked happy. I looked like I was, but it was a false happiness. I was blinded so far by seduction. I was too busy being a Sunday saint and a Monday ain't, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's real country way of putting it. But
yeah, but you see me smiling a whole lot when you're telling these painful things, and it's not that I'm laughing at your story. It's because, man, I've been there. You know, so many of the things that you're saying, I'm just like, yeah. Yep, I'm stupid too.
Been there. And so, man, I started dating this girl. There's a difference in a love thing and a lust thing. There's a difference, and I did not know what that was at the time frame. I thought I knew what love was, and I'm sure that there's plenty of country songs out there. I thought I knew what love was, boo-hoo-hoo, you know, whatever.
But, all the wrong places.
Yeah, I love it all the wrong places. Right. Exactly. I'm not going to play that one on the guitar, but anyway. So, man, I was still rodeo clowning a little bit, and I'd left that job, left AT&T, went to another job. Well, that job fired me within like a day or two, and it was just over some paperwork technicalities and some things that were out of my control. And so I went for a while without work, and when you get a while without work, then isolation becomes the second partner in your relationship with the woman that you're with. At this point in time, I was living in her brother's house. Because my dad had moved here to Longview. And make the long story short, I dealt with isolation, dealt with the room getting smaller and smaller. And isolation is a real thing if you've ever walked through depression. And I did not know that I was dealing with depression yet. I had no idea. And, you know, I decided, okay, during this time frame, I'm going to rededicate my life, quit drinking a little bit, start going back to church, really listening. And I thought that I was going to do that. I was still playing church. I don't know what it was, man. Like, I was still playing church. I was like, if I can just get in good graces with the Father, everything will work out, because a lot of times we think that we have to call on God because we're in trouble. We think that just because we're in trouble, that is the only time that we need to call out to Him. And I'm sorry, folks, that is the wrong impression. That is a wrong idea. That is not what God is about. God is a loving God, and He is there for you, and He is there in your present time of need. But He is also there. He wants to hear you sing. He wants to hear you praise Him. He wants to hear you. And folks say, well, you're talking an awful lot about God. I'm getting to the point to where everything comes together. I'm getting to that point. Bear with me. I'm long-winded like my daddy. You've heard my daddy preach. So at this time frame, I started working at a jail. And my dad told me, he said, son, I don't think that's probably going to be the best move for you. And he said, giving the fact of your, the things that you've told me, of the things that you deal with, of being sad and being lonely and being depressed, it's going to intensify. And of course, the money was speaking a lot louder than God through my father.
Of course.
That'll preach. The money was speaking so much louder than what God through him. And I'm not saying that my parents had it right all these years. I'm not saying that they had it right, but they raised me enough to know the voice of God. They raised me enough to know what right is. And they were the voice of reasoning at that point in time, because I was not hearing it from God himself. Because I had shut my spiritual earlobes off. So I started working at this jail. And when I began working there, I would be back in church, back on the bottle, off the bottle, back in church, off the bottle, and then back on the bottle again. Still playing at this church. Still playing church. That's what it is. And, get up there and be singing songs like Waymaker, Miracle Worker, Promise Keeper, Light in the Darkness, my God, that is who you are. I didn't believe what I was singing. And so, fast forward to this point in time, I started working in that jail, and man, first off, if you've ever been to jail, if you've ever been, you know exactly where I'm headed with this. And those of you that haven't, I pray that you never go into the doors of a jail cell. There are things that happen in there that were much more than this sheltered country boy could even fathom. Had people telling me that they were going to rape and kill my mom, that they were going to rape and kill my little sister, that they were, the mind games started taking place. And I went to a liquor store one night. I don't even remember where I was at, but I went to a liquor store and I grabbed probably two or three fifths of Jack Daniels and brought it back to the house. And I was working night shift, so I was off that night, and I went and got everything, and I was still partying a little bit, drinking a little bit, but this is where the drinking took over my life, because I found myself having night terrors and nightmares of the things that were happening in my daily work hours. Fears of the killing, fears of you're not going to make it. If that person gets out of jail, you're going to be killed. If that person ever gets their freedom for serving their time, you will be dead the next morning that they get out. You'll be dead. And so people are like, oh man, a jail, that would be a great place to do ministry. You're right. Jails need ministry more than anything. I love jail ministry, man. I would love the people that are a part of those. And during that time frame, man, I would go through, I probably worked there 4 months, and I literally was so hooked on alcohol. There's a lot of things that I'm not even being able to share right now because I don't remember, because I was so intoxicated. I barely remember getting to work on time. I would turn over in the middle of the day from sleeping. I would start drinking when I got home and be passed out. And I would still drink and be buzzed when I went to work. Enough to take the edge off. On my nights off, I would drink until I would pass smooth out. Because I knew that that was the only closure that I had. So we fast forward. I think I'm still in love. I get engaged to this girl. No. Like, no. Wrong decision. Wrong decision. And it taught me life lessons. I'll tell you that. It taught me a lot of life lessons through that. But I'd had a friend of mine tell me, he said, "Hey, there's another rodeo coming up," and I was like, I was still rodeoing when I could, you know, and I was like, man, I'm about to go party it up. I would be walking into rodeos at that point in time. I'd have a case of Coors and a fifth of Jack Daniels in my back seat, and I'd be drinking before the rodeo ever started. I would get into a rodeo arena about half lit at that point in time, just so that I could be funny, because the real Zach was not funny no more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's just too heavy.
The real Zach couldn't be funny. The real Zach could not produce emotions.
You find yourself at that point where it's either euphoric or rage.
Yeah, exactly. And man, I would fight somebody at the drop of a hat at that point in time. I mean, even if I was intoxicated, I'd fight somebody at the drop of a hat. And I'm a big old dude. That's not, I mean, like, that's like attempted murder. That's like attempted murder, you know, when I get done, because I was so mad, you know. And it was just things in my life that I wasn't happy about, questions of why. And I was trying to fill a void. Here's where it gets good, man, is where I was trying to fill a void. And I called my mom. I was going down to where she lives at. And she said, "Hey, you're coming over to the house." She said, "You need to come get the key from me." She said, "I'm at prayer meeting." I said, "I ain't walking into no prayer meeting." I remember saying those words. And the Holy Spirit rose up inside her. She said, "Zackery Wade, you probably need it." And I walked in. Pastor Jared, if I'm lying, I'm dying. I walked in. This lady, I didn't even know, man. I didn't even know her. And she looked at me and she said, "You're running so far from the call of God on your life right now. It is unbelievable. You are running so far from what you know is right." I didn't know her. She didn't know me. And she said, "God is telling you that now is the time to make things right. This is your final chance. You do not get no more chances of making things right." Because God had given me 400, 500. Pretty much what God was telling me is, you either get right, or if you die tomorrow, you will spend eternity in hell. God wasn't saying that I would never be able to come back, because that's not God. God is saying this. God is a loving God. He is such a loving God, Pastor Jared. He is, and you know it as well as I do, He is such a loving God. Man, I dropped to my knees that night and I prayed through. And I'm happy to share that at the end of this month, I will be celebrating a complete year of sobriety. God is so good, man. And I found out that He could break the sadness that was in me. I found out that He could break the internal barriers that I had. I'm able to smile again. I'm able to laugh again. I'm able to be whole again. And I'm so thankful that God loved me enough to send His Son to die for me. But for whoever's watching this, I know that this is a podcast and this is a video for YouTube as well. But any of you that are out there watching YouTube, watching it anywhere else, folks, I don't care what you've been through. God doesn't care about your past. He cares about your future. He cares more about your future than your past. That's what I love about Him. He looks on the heart. He looks on the heart's condition. He loves you. You may be out there and you may feel like you're unlovable, but He loves you. He loves you so much. He died. Jesus Christ died for you. Man, it's so simple. You know, you look at it now and you think, man, where could I have been if I'd have just made the right decision beforehand? I have those thoughts every day of, man, you were pretty stupid back then. you were pretty stupid. And brother, I'm telling you, God has done so much in my life. Shortly after I got prayed through, I had an invite, and I've been singing in Brazoria, Texas. I literally got a call May. I don't even remember what day it was. But anyways, May, I got a call. Hey, we want you to come sing for us. We want you to come sing lead for us. And I'd filled in for him a couple of times in the past. And he said, I'll give you 24 hours. I said, yeah, okay. All right. And I told God, and God spoke to me as plain as day. And He said, will you do my work? He asked me, He said, will you do my work fully? Will you completely follow me and trust me? And I said, God, I don't want to go back into ministry again. I don't want to. This guy called me at 9:00 on a Tuesday. Mind you, he says 24 hours. I called him back at 8:45 the next morning because I hadn't slept all night. I wrestled with the Lord because I'm stubborn. Just letting y'all, just PSA out there, if you ever want to wrestle with God, don't try it. You're not going to win. I promise. You're never going to win. And I've been singing with them for almost a year now, and started working as a radio DJ down there, man, and doing a Christian country station, and it is a 90.5 KJIC down there in Alvin, Texas. You can get it on the app and iHeartRadio, stuff like that. That'll be all in the link later on, I'm sure. But God is blessing, man. And my message to everyone else is this, is that He can make you go free. He can help you go free. And I'm going to sing a couple of songs that just have ministered to me over the years. If that's all right, if we still got time, I hope we do.
Hey, go for it, man. I got all day.
I stood in the courtroom. The judge turned my way. Looks like you're guilty. Now what do you say? I spoke up. Your Honor, I have no defense, but that's when His mercy walked in. Mercy walked in, and it pleaded my case. Called to the stand was God's saving grace. The blood was presented that covered my sin, forgiven when His mercy walked. I stood there and I wondered, Lord, how can this be? That someone so guilty had just been set free. You see my chains, they were broken. I felt born again. The very moment that His mercy walked in. Oh, mercy walked in, and it pleaded my case. Called to the stand was God's saving grace. But was presented that covered my sin, forgiven when His mercy walked in. Oh, His blood was presented and it covered my sin. The moment His mercy walked in. That's one of them, man. That's me. That I'm so glad that mercy walked in and it pleaded my case, and it can plead for your case as well. He walked in and He pleaded my case. And I know, just like many of you, you've probably gone through the same thing that I have, or you've gone through worse. I'm not saying that I've, done everything under the sun, but, His mercies are new every morning. That's the thing that I love about it. This one's going to be a little bit more of like a Cajun beat. I wanted to do something a little bit upbeat on here today, but it's got a country vibe to it, and it's kind of something that I started playing at the beginning. But here it is. Driving around down South Louisiana, stopped at a town called Galliana. Saw a sign on the church that said a fish Friday night. A little old Cajun preacher was preaching, reminding me of an old camp meeting when he brought St. Matthew 4:19 to life. Yeah, I catch 'em, God cleans 'em. I bait the hook with the love of the kingdom. I've been called to be a fisher of men. Yeah, I catch 'em, God cleans 'em. Every foot saves every soul that believes him. A real man, and He washes away their sin. taking long for him to catch my attention. He was long on grace and short on religion. He said a prayer and that was all that she wrote. Well, I said amen, and it's God as my witness. I fell in that big old net of forgiveness, and before I knew it, we were all in the same boat. I catch 'em, God takes 'em, fades a hook with the love of the kingdom. I've been called to be a fisher of men, yeah. I catch 'em, God brings 'em, heaven knows saves every soul that believes him, a real man. Washes away their sin. Oh yeah, a real man, and he washes away their sin. Oh yes, he does. A real man, and he washes away their sins. Oh yeah, I love it,
Man.
Woo!
That's a great story, man. I know that I know somebody watching this is gonna relate, and you're gonna talk to somebody. I appreciate you coming and spending some time with us and giving us a free little concert too.
Buddy. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. I probably didn't pick the best location. I'm like right here by the freeway or the road right here. But man, I appreciate you calling me. As you said, man, we're old friends. It's been too long. We need to see each other again after all of this craziness in the world is ending. And is it okay if I say something right fast before we go?
Absolutely.
You know, I believe that, folks, guys, we're in trying times here in the United States. This is probably one of the craziest times that I've ever seen in almost 23 years. Folks, it is real. It's a real thing that's happening. It's a real attack. We're being attacked by an enemy that we cannot see. But you know what God's doing? God is saying, if my people, which will call upon my name, will humble themselves and pray, I will heal their land. So what do we need to do? We need to give this world back to God. Give your life to Jesus Christ if you haven't done that. Step 2 is pray for the deliverance of this world. Pray for the deliverance of this world. And if you're out there and you have a sickness in your body, and it is, whether it be COVID-19, whether it be cancer, whether it be anything, I pray that the Lord will heal your body and heal your spirit today. And to all of the people that are out there that are feeling anxious and feeling depressed and everything, we know it's real. It's hard to deal with it. It's hard. If you give it to Jesus, he'll make all things new. I love what it says in 2 Peter 2:8, where it says, cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. If you read that in another translation, it says that cast all of your anxiety on him, for he cares for you. And that's what we need to do. Because, folks, if you're out there and you're feeling anxious, you've had people tell you, if you're needing a fix that alcohol can't fix, if you're needing a fix that antidepressants cannot fix, try Jesus. He doesn't come with any side effects. He just comes with love. He is a loving God. And he will heal your broken body.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Man, I appreciate it. Man, that was, this has been one of the coolest things for me, honestly. This is probably the first interview that I've ever done one-on-one with somebody. So this is, at first when you text me, I was like, man, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. Like, I don't know. And
but you can tell I'm no professional.
God spoke to me and was like, you need to do this. Somebody out there needs to hear your story. And, if this helped you in some way, man, if it helped you in some way, let him. There's a comment box down below for those of you that are watching on YouTube. If you know, if you prayed a prayer of salvation after this message, after this video, if you prayed a prayer of deliverance, or if you're needing prayer, comment. Pastor Jared will, message me or whatever on our video here, and I will do my best to respond from my personal YouTube page. I don't have many videos, so I wouldn't say go subscribe to mine yet because I don't have any videos up right now. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this, man. This has been an opportunity to share the gospel, and I love it.
Well, I appreciate it. I've enjoyed it too, and I just wanted to add, because it hit me a while ago when you were talking. All these
Yes,
people, and I did it too. I had my little vices that I ran to, and the reason we do that is because we're trying to relieve some of the pressure of the world, some of the weight that we get into, and we're looking for that relief. And that just led me back to Matthew 11:30. Jesus says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And
come on.
I can't explain it in a way that somebody who hasn't experienced will understand, but we're not going to get out of this life without pain. We're not going to get out of this life without having to work at it. But for an unexplainable reason, if you turn it over to Jesus, it ain't as big. It ain't as hard. And you won't know it until you try it.
Absolutely, man. And God is the ultimate. He's the ultimate supplier for all of our needs, man. And so, my advice to everybody out there is, during all of this, stay safe. Number one, cling to Him. Quit going crazy. And just on a funnier note, because I sometimes have to get a little bit funny with some things. Quit buying all the toilet paper.
I was about to say, y'all run to God like He's the last pack of toilet paper in Walmart.
Come on. Come on.
All right, Zach, I'm going to cut this before we get too crazy. But you have a great day, all right, man?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
I catch 'em, God cleans 'em, I bait the hook with the love.